scott.jackson@bbc.co.uk. Now, I went to see this on Friday, actually. A poignant exhibition is open in Leicester, highlighting the plight of refugees. It's called Light in the Darkness, and was created by the Leicester-based Greek-born artist George Sfougaras, and includes photographs, kind of a soundscape, and a tent, essentially, in the middle of the space in which the installation is. And it kind of symbolises the fragility of life. It's a really, really beautiful exhibition. I was lucky enough, in fact, to visit on Friday and to meet up with George.
Hello, my name is George Sfougaras. I'm a Leicester artist, and we're actually outside the beautiful Unitarian chapel on Eastbourne Street in Leicester.
I've always thought this building is just really interesting, not only because it's an iconic building, and actually we're going to discover a bit more about it perhaps later on. Arguably the first brick-built building in Leicester, certainly one of the first, certainly the biggest. And yet opposite is, fabulous new, all singing, all dancing, shopping centre and so on. It's that juxtaposition I've always thought quite the latest and the oldest, literally across the road.
Yes, I mean, it is quite beautiful. That juxtaposition is comfortable for me, but I think my preference would be for something like this. And in fact, when we have visitors that go outside the back and see this magnificent enclosed garden, which is full of history and surrounded by, as you say, this incredible building, 1708. I mean, it's astonishing, isn't it? When people sit out there, they say this is like a bit of paradise in the middle of all the mayhem going on around you. And you really do feel cocooned and protected.
I haven't seen this yet, but does that cocoon, that safety, that sort of enclosed, almost like a giant building hug, does that affect your art?
Well, I think, through circumstances, I've actually been here much more often than I normally am at an exhibition. Normally you hand over the piece of work and then the curator will take it over and staff will supervise it. But because I am connected with the community and I know a lot of the people here, it felt comfortable for me to hang around. But also what's really beautiful is actually working here. Now, what work is going to happen in the quiet moments between showing people around, I don't know, but it's been very beautiful to actually occupy this space during the last few days.
Before we go and see it, tell me a little bit about the ideas that you're exploring through this installation.
Well, the ideas are originally it started as a response to a piece of work at Leicester Museum, the famous Coet's triptych, which, as you know, was smuggled out of Germany because he was, hated by the Nazis. He was a pacifist. And so this piece of work has got a massive history. It was recovered in pieces after the war, and it's very evocative. And also it occupies a space within one of the galleries, one of the most famous galleries in the world, which we really need to value more, perhaps. A gallery comprising pieces of work that would have been destroyed. It's really a story of survival, a story of love, for art, and a story of people moving on in the right direction. And I think my installation, which originally was supposed to be a painting, tried to bring those things together in a more abstract way. But then the tents just popped out from nowhere because we're surrounded by images in the media now of people being displaced, of people living in these horrific conditions in camps, And it just felt like that needed flagging up and connecting that with migration and the human need for shelter and safety. So I think it's actually very fitting that the exhibition takes place here. I'm delighted.
Can we go and have a look?
Yeah.
Okay, you lead the way. So we're going in through the front doors, big glass front doors, kind of a slightly modern reception, actually, against, again, the old form of the building. So, as we say, 300 odd years old.
So this is a room which is used for conferences and social events, and I think it was a very clever idea to convert what I presume was the old basement of the school next door into a space. Before we go in, would you mind if I let you go in on your own?
No.
Just for 2 or 3 minutes to have a look around and then perhaps record, be aware of your feelings. And then I will join you in 1 minute or so?
Yes.
1 minute, perhaps.
Okay, so it's interesting that immediately, because we're downstairs, of course, there's a change of temperature and of sound. And it's a conference room with a tent in the middle on which are projected images of people who have been displaced through history It makes me want to whisper, which isn't very good for radio. Was that the intention?
Well, it's a quiet space that hopefully people will occupy for a very brief time and take something out with them, you know. It's perhaps not a happy exhibition at first glance, but actually the light symbolizes the fact that remembrance is cyclical and we go back and forth. So if you look at the images, they change every time the light goes round, slightly. But this thing about whispering, no, we don't have to whisper. It's perhaps your response to it, which is very valid, you know, the fact that you feel there is some reverence that needs to be brought to this. And it was my feeling as well when I put this up. I felt slightly that was trespassing in the past lives of people, and it is a very common response that people think, yeah, it's, you know, the departed, and it's kind of a bit sad, and let's be respectful. But actually there is joy in the photographs as well. These people have given rise to us, you know. So the photograph of the young girl, the young woman at 16 who died at 21 under tragic circumstances, is from a community that no longer exists in Crete. The whole of the Jewish community were destroyed on board a ship called Tanais in 1944 in April. And she was one of the victims, together with prisoners of war, both, you know, British and Italian, and also Greek prisoners of war. But the whole of the Jewish community was, you know, destroyed in one fell swoop, really. The reason I picked that photograph is because her youth and beauty, you know, cannot be ignored. You know, we must celebrate the fact that her life meant something, that she was a joyous young person full of promise. And I think the dichotomy between the sadness of the story and that wonderful face is, I think, the glimpse of light in the whole darkness. You know, that life has moments of absolute joy regardless of the tragedy that often ensues. And that is what defines us as human beings, the ability to connect those two and to draw conclusions from it. I mean, it's a big emotional journey, you know, to use photographs of people that died under tragic circumstances, also members of my own family that were deported, friends of theirs. And there are some members of the family that are still alive. And there is a huge connection. It's really a memorial, if you like, where our ancestors are all kind of cohabiting this space. And this was said very nicely by Claire Jackson, who is a member of the Jewish community in Leicester, whose grandparents are depicted on the tent. And I said to her, it's really wonderful to have our ancestors share this space of remembrance. And she said, yes, that's exactly how I feel. And that really gave me license then to move away from it and feel less hurt by some of the histories, you know, and more celebratory about, you know, their lives. Just like, as you pointed out, from that image, there is joy even in the sadness, light in the darkness.
Well, the exhibition is at the Great Meeting Unitarian Chapel in Leicester until Wednesday, although I think that they're hoping it'll actually be there until late Thursday, I think. And of course there is a version of it at the New Walk Museum in Leicester as well. Just lovely stuff, and we'll be in touch. And actually, whilst I was there, the building itself, the Unitarian Chapel, which is just beautiful, has been undergoing all kinds of restoration work. And I couldn't resist doing a piece then, so you'll hear that a bit later on in the week, because it's just a really amazing building. Look, it's 11:25. You're listening to BBC Radio Leicester. This is The Script, and it's called Break Even.